Hi, folks. Welcome to this insight from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where last night it rained and thundered and there was a really bad storm in the middle of April, but really welcome because it's dry here, just like it is across the prairies. What I'd like to talk to you today is the transition storm, the storm that's coming that I heard Steve Bauer from Iowa speak about in February when I was at the Iowa Young Farmers Conference. The average price per land in Iowa is $6,800 an acre, and 34% of the land has owners over 75 years of age, and 60% of the land is owned by people 65 and older, my age. The next generation of producers, there are 68% of farmers who have no children who currently farm, and 51% of farmers do not have an identified successor. And the reason I'm here in Sioux Falls is to speak to the Family Business, Prairie Family Business Organization, Association for Family Business, especially to farm families, because there's so much work that needs to be done. So here's what Steve Bauer, B-O-H-R, calls the farm succession perfect storm. The age of the landowners, 60% of them are over 65, so we have to pay attention to how old we are. All-time high land values, which is no surprise to any of you watching this. We're all dealing with that. Cash flow to acquire land is outside of long-term profitability. When you're paying $5,000, $6,000 an acre for land, that's not the break-even price. We don't even use that word anymore. When I was the first young home economist back in the late 70s, early 80s, the break-even price of land was $785. Nobody's paying $785 an acre for land anymore. So farm is a legacy asset, and people want to hold it in the family. It's very important to them. But unfortunately, a grandmother in Iowa hung on to the land because that's the way it's incentivized for tax. And when she passed, she split it into 15 pieces. And therefore, there goes the farm. And that's the storm here, is that people are not willing to navigate having a good session with their accountant and figuring out what is the right way to address the tax situation so that you can actually go ahead and make good decisions, pay the tax, don't keep kicking the can down the road and deferring it, and actually have control over how you want to transition that piece of equity, which is your farmland. So there's a lot of longevity of landowners and seeing the sandwich generation above them and below them. And the quality of life or advice, by specialists may be limited by location, experience, and incentive. And so you need to make sure you have a really good accountant and really good legal advice. And of course, interest rates are higher, and that impacts your cash flow. So there's a lot of family fights over fair versus equal, he says, and I don't even use that word anymore, as you know. Fairness is helping everyone in your farm family be successful, the heirs, the non-farm heirs of the farm, and the farm successors. So we need to view performance-based pay versus inheritance-based pay is what Steve Bauer says. And farming is difficult, and each generation produces fewer farmers who are willing to take the risk. Well, let's just sit on that for a minute. Who is willing to take the risk? And a lot of farm successors are willing to take the risk, and that costs something for them to do that. And then there's also this deferral mentality, as we said before, pushing things down to the future. And procrastination causes owners to be susceptible to emotional decision-making mixed with greed, hope, and fear. Okay, so what are the solutions according to Bauer? Know your role as a landowner, a producer, or an interested third party, and have really good matching leasing agreements. Partner for the economies of scale, share equipment, use input buying groups, and gain financial benchmarking data so you know what your cost of production is and what your break-even prices are. And understand how to use the tools in your toolbox, such as the marketing, and getting good marketing advice so you're getting maximum dollar for what you produce. Understand tax brackets, bonus depreciation, and lease-to-own leases, and ask really good questions of your accountant and ask for clarification when you don't understand. and understand the marketplace. And I would say develop relationships with landowners, and also especially those who don't have a successor, because I also believe in adoption. I'm an adoptive parent myself, and my son and my husband are in a joint venture together with their corporations. And one of my coaches, Lydia Carpenter, is in a joint venture with a non-related party. So there's many different ways where you can have access to land. And then Steve says, give heirs a reason to want to row the boat together and to own the load and to own the land and have skin in the game with the success of the farmland ownership, and discuss the different approaches and outcomes with fair market value versus family market value, and what are the workable options for keeping the land together. So you also need to be prepared for understanding the consequences of your transition decisions, especially things like will probate, which a lot of people try to avoid. But in the big scheme of things, I just listened to Levi Dirksen from Saskatoon last week, and he said, you need to really look at that, because that's actually not a bad idea compared to the grand scheme of the value of all your assets. And then you'll also have to compete with the people who are very aggressive to buy land. And you have to think about how you can farm without the bank and have working capital so that you can protect and build your working capital, and understand the difference between an exit strategy when the farmer spends down the business over time with the intention of liquidation, rather than what we call the successor effect when there's a growth effect. So also identify what you can control and what you can't control. That's a pretty long list. So I really would encourage you to go back to the article itself called Tips to Deal with Transition Storms, and think about the conversations that you need to have, because really it's all about financial transparency and talking about how much risk you're willing to navigate in the storm. Am I risking to go outside today and get soaking wet? No, I'll be working with 50 farmers here in the conference and also 20 of them online. But they have blocked time to come and make decisions around figuring out how to get their income streams, their housing, and fairness around the transition of their farm assets. And you can do this too. You just need to think about what you can control and what you can't, and you just need to take the next step, because it's your farm, it's your family, it's your choice, and there's lots of choices ahead, because the bumps along the road in agriculture are not going away. Every year there's a new challenge, and we'll always have storms to navigate. So get your crop insurance and your hail insurance and manage your risk well, and have lots of conversations about why you want to make the financial decisions you do. See you next time.